Hey everybody, oh what a fine evening, what a fine lovely evening we have here today. It is Devin from the Olde Nerdcast broadcasting to you live as always from the center of Texas, undisclosed location. You're never gonna know where it's at, you're never gonna be able to find me on this nice fine lovely evening. It's Friday, October 22nd, 2021, and what am I doing talking like this? I have no idea what even accent I'm trying to do. I'm just in a pretty good mood and decided to put on an accent right at the top of the show. I don't know what kind of accent that was supposed to be. It started off kind of a little bit Irish, and then it just turned into something way random and different. But how are you guys doing? I hope you guys are doing good. I hope everyone's having a pretty nice day. It's Friday. So for all you wage slaves out there that happen to slave during the Monday through Friday 9 to 5 contingent, your weekend is here. Celebrate with the libation of your choice. That's good. That's good stuff. And yeah, I hope that your weekend treats you well. It's starting off pretty decent for me so far. I've got my mic on a stand now. I took it off of the one last stream. Justin noticed that it was I guess vibrating against the desktop that I had it sitting on before, making all sorts of weird noise. To try to mitigate that, I had this mic stand. I never bothered using it. I didn't even notice that this Yeti, excuse me, I didn't even notice that this Yeti has a little hole back under here that allowed me to mount it to this little stand. But once I saw it, I was like, fuck it, I'm using this thing. So yeah, I have my mic on a stand now. Hopefully that reduces some of that auxiliary noise. I've got a little windscreen coming in soon, so hopefully when I pop my peas, it won't be quite as annoying as it had been in the past. But yeah, and because I now have this sitting in this stand and not on, it's not on this thing, I now have the ability to rotate it so that the mute button faces me. So hopefully I won't get cucked by the mute button anymore. I gotta get back up on my EV game. Ever since I saw that video, the Rivian video, where they were talking, not the video, it was the Rivian post, I believe, from Jalopnik, where they were talking about trying to get $15,000 worth of additional money from add-ons and DLC and shit like that. Ever since I saw that, I was like, ugh, it just really sucked the life out of me as far as like my excitement for EV vehicles and the whole EV scene and the revitalization of the auto industry and competition in a new booming sector. Like all of that, you know, was cool to me until I saw the direction, the inevitable direction that it's going to go in, which is since all of this shit is like completely electric and all online now, we're going to give you a car that's, you know, 50 to 60% of its features are going to be paywalled. And you're gonna have to sub up to unlock all of these features, which, you know, a certain point, like I was thinking about it, I was like, how different is that from like buying aftermarket parts for a car? Like get a Honda Civic, just using a classic example from like the late 90s. You get a Honda Civic, it has like what 120, 130 horsepower right off the lot and all this, you know, just factory stuff. And then you pay a bunch of money to like replace the air intake or replace the intercooler or replace the spark plugs or do this or do that, strut bars and, you know, maybe even an aftermarket turbo and all this sort of stuff. And it's a cost too that you pay after the fact to get as much performance from your car as possible. And is that not the same as paying quote unquote DLC for unlocking these features that are available basically from factory? And I'm thinking about that and I'm like, you know, I could understand if somebody wanted to make an argument that it wasn't any different, but to me it is, and I'll tell you why. It's kind of like there's a grunt work that you have to do in modifying a factory car to be like some kind of a racer or whatever. It's not like the feature exists and the feature is built in and the feature is already configured and ready to go and is fully operational at the flick of a switch and all you have to do is pay to have that switch flipped. It's like, no, I mean, I guess maybe if you're rich enough, you flip the switch by way of taking your car to whatever mechanic you trust to deal with it properly, and then you flip the switch by swiping your credit card, and then after some determined amount of time, you go by and pick your car up, and it has, 45 extra horsepower and really tight steering and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, okay, I guess technically that's the same as flipping a switch and having your car, function better. But you still have to make those investments, you have to make those investments independently when you're modifying a car versus those investments having already been made, and you just have to unlock the access to them with a feature that's factory locked. So I guess in a certain sense, maybe I have more regard for like the pathway that involves a little bit more work. And in a lot of cases, I mean, and the thing is, like, when you're modifying those cars, you're also like voiding the warranties for certain. Like, you are forcing a vehicle to operate in a way that the manufacturer didn't necessarily want them to operate. So it's not like, I mean, I don't know if Honda themselves actually, I guess they do have factory turbos in some of their cars, but it's not like they're the ones making a lot of those aftermarket turbos. They're aftermarket, so they're, by their nature, they're built after, the car has already been put to market, and somebody makes it to modify the car past what it was supposed to be originally spec'd to be. So because it is like you are taking the initiative to tinker with an already built off the lot or off the line product, it is a little bit different than because you already paid Honda for the product, and then you pay them, they give you the product, and then you take that product and you do whatever you want with it on your own. You pay whoever you want that may or may not be associated with Honda to do whatever you need to do with it to get it to be the way you want to be. You could do all sorts of shit with it. You could take a fucking Honda CRX and turn it into a pickup truck if you really wanted to. That would be interesting to see. But I mean, if you really felt the need to, you could do that. And I guess with these features, they're a little bit more restrictive. They're a little bit more specific, the things that become available to you, because they're the things that come from the manufacturer. And in my view, it's like, well, if the manufacturer went through all the trouble to actually develop it, then why don't they just give it to you as a part of the car's base features when you purchase it? And then it's kind of like, well, what's the difference between that and, like, say, getting a Honda Civic EX or a Honda Civic SIR? And, like the SIR, you're paying extra the same way you would pay for that DLC for all of the bells and whistles that make the SIR, the Civic SIR, special, or the Integra Type R, whatever you're getting, those features that make it special. So what's really the difference there? And at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to being a curmudgeon-y old man that's angry about progress and technology. And like, to me, like, you gotta do the grunt work with popping the engine and pulling out gears and bolts and spriggets and oil flying everywhere, and you're just grunting and squeezing pipes to fit into other areas and putting on turbos and all that sort of stuff. And that's more legitimate. Like, doing that work is more legitimate than, like, boop, okay, now your feature's on, go forth and frolic or whatever. It's just the lazification of Gen Z. They don't want to do the work. Nobody wants to work anymore. Nobody wants to work. I hope I'm not turning into one of those dudes, but you know what? Look at all this gray. Maybe I am slowly morphing into one of those guys. At least I recognize it, though. I'm gonna pat myself on the back for that one. At least I recognize it, and I challenge my own. I take the time to challenge my own thought on things. So, whatever that's worth, I'll give myself credit for that. But to that point, there is this video I did want to watch. The electric F-150 Lightning first ride. Is this the most important EV ever? Ben Sullins, the most important EV ever. That's a pretty intense question. I mean, what? I guess he'll answer the question as he shares his thoughts on his drive. So why don't we just move on over there and get right to it. I do want one of these. I always liked the F-150s, and I definitely want an EV one.
Accelerating the transition to sustainable living. You've heard the mantra before, from me, from companies like Tesla, but how do you convince more than just these early adopters that going electric is the right move? How do you convince people that have decades old traditions of certain cars that are a part of their identity that there's a better way, that they should change who they are and embrace this new electric revolution? Honestly, you don't. You don't ask them to change. You bring the change to them. So when I was out in Austin, Texas, driving the Ford F-150 Lightning, which is the electric version of the best-selling vehicle in the United States for over 40 years, I couldn't help but wonder, is this the most important electric vehicle ever made? Let's begin. Technology adoption, specifically disruptive technology like electric vehicles, follow a familiar pattern. This pattern is well documented in Jeffrey Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm, and it is well known throughout the industry about how new things like an electric vehicle, or even rewind the clock, something like a cell phone, will be adopted in kind of the broad populace, the broad category of potential consumers. First, it starts with your innovators, the people that are coming up with these technologies and pushing the boundaries forward. They're investing their time, their money, bringing others together, making things happen. You can rewind the clock in the EV space, and you even really all the way back to the early days of like the EV1, and think that was a really innovative product. Unfortunately, as we know, it got killed, but later on, that spark birthed Tesla Motors. And without a doubt, people like Elon Musk and JB Straubel and Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning are serious innovators in the electric vehicle space. Tesla was the spark that lit the fire, which has now taken over the entire automotive industry. So after the innovators, you have the early adopters. These are the enthusiasts, the folks that are really interested in the latest and greatest technology. And between these two categories of buyers, we're only looking at about 15 or 16% of the market. Now, the trick is, if you look at that 15 or 16% and you compare it to how many electric vehicles are being sold of a percent of sales in the US, we're only at about 2%. So we're still very much in the earlier part of this technology adoption curve. So after these first two stages, what you have is
because these things are so fucking expensive.
The chasm part. And how do you get from visionaries and early adopters to the early majority, the pragmatists?
Make them cheaper.
Well, you need a product that is kind of feature complete. But once you get there, once the kind of feature set is complete and it seems obvious, it's just kind of the de facto standard, now is when you start to get into the big numbers. This is the early majority, the major majority, and then eventually they have what are called the laggards, the people that just won't ever do it. They're not interested. There are people out there that still ride horses every day, for example. Now, if you don't want to be a laggard, I suggest you check out today's sponsor, NordVPN. NordVPN is that awesome service that helps protect your back guarantee. So check it out. You're building that bridge from those early adopters to the early majority. And that is why I'm so excited about this vehicle. Oh, and for the record, no one company can do this. If you think about it, we want competition, right? So you need Tesla, you need Ford, you need VW, you need Rivian, you need Lucid, you need all of them to offer everything that anybody could ever want. Again, otherwise, this disruptive technology will fail and kind of fall down that chasm, unfortunately. But of course, how will this one stack up? How will the F-150 Lightning do? Well, let me show you what I saw out in Austin.
All right. Ready?
Yep. Yeah. Woo. The first thing that I think is worth mentioning when it comes to the F-150 is just how much of an F-150 it is.
It looks like an
Besides
F-150.
the full bar headlight and full bar tail light and the badging on the side, it looks almost identical to a regular F-150. And that is great because, again, we're bringing
people just want to buy cars.
People that want it. We're not asking them to get something that looks or feels totally different. So the F-150 styling, I think, is a win. I think the headlight and tail light additions give it a bit more of an aggressive look, but overall, the size and the...
Consider how much time it took to get to this point where auto manufacturers are finally starting to develop EVs that just look like regular cars. There were so many years where they would put out some new kind of hybrid or something, or electric car where it just looked like the ugliest fucking thing. Even the Prius, like the Prius looked fucking gross, man. I always looked at that thing wondering why. Why would they purposely make a car that is so attractive with its specs look completely and totally undesirable physically? Like, why would you go out of your way to do that? And you would think that it would just be second nature for an auto manufacturer to go, oh, I want to develop a car that I want a lot of people to buy. Let me make it attractive for people who want to buy it. You know, we think it would be second nature for them to have that thought, but really it took pretty much up until Tesla. And then even really, like, Tesla was the only one making, you know, electric cars that looked like decent normal cars. It still took pretty much right up until here, where now most companies that are putting out EVs are putting them out in a way that make them look fairly attractive. And I know it's kind of funny I mentioned Tesla. They're kind of going the other way with Cybertruck. That thing just looks like something out of Free Jack. Excuse me. Shout out to those who remember that movie. But yeah, so they're going the opposite way with that, while, you know, Rivian looks like a normal truck, albeit with really awesome headlights, and this Ford Lightning looks like a F-150 Lightning looks like a normal truck, and you have Nissan's slate of EVs that look like normal cars, even the Leaf, relatively speaking, and all these other EVs that just look like normal cars now. And it's like, if you had done this years ago, where would we be at with this? Like, just make it desirable, make people want to drive it. Like, all of the jokes and bashing that went on against versus Prius owners because their cars were just physically and immediately recognizable as ugly and pretentious and even peacocky to an extent, and not even like peacocky in a good way, but like in a fucking gross way. If those cars just looked like normal cars, no, that probably wouldn't have happened. It probably wouldn't have served as a deterrent to the amount of people that it inevitably served as a deterrent to. You know, people that, you know, maybe they're interested in EVs or hybrids, but they don't want to drive something that they're going to get made fun of every day, especially if you're dropping a substantial amount of money on it. I mean, I drove a PT Cruiser for God knows how many years, and I understand exactly what it's like to drive something that everyone makes fun of, believe me. But my PT Cruiser was the only car I could afford on the lot at the time after my other car was totaled. And, you know, it was like $9,000. So I was easily able to square being made fun of for driving a PT Cruiser against the fact that I didn't spend a lot of money for it. But if you're asking people to spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on some of these electric options, the last thing they're going to want to do is drop that money and then get made fun of every day, you know? So it's great that they're finally starting to put out vehicles that look like vehicles, but it's just kind of sad that it took this long. I mean, it's not like the auto industry was born overnight. They've been putting out desirable cars for like 120 some odd years. Maybe not 120 years, but not too far off from that, really.
The shape is exactly what you would expect. In fact, I would bet that if the average person on the road saw this, they wouldn't even know it was electric. Maybe the grille on the front, which still aesthetically is there, but otherwise isn't there, maybe is the only clue that would give it away that this is not your normal F-150. The only version that is currently available is this 4-door Super Crew cab option with a 5.5-foot bed, which of course, when the tailgate does fold down, is quite spacious and can handle pretty much anything that most people are going to need. Sticking with the exterior, you have the tailgate, which is automatic up and down, and then it has this little step ladder that comes out, and the whole surface there is designed to be used for work. There's sort of a ruler that you can measure things if you're, say, cutting wood or anything like that, as well as these little nook and crannies where you can kind of set a pen or an iPad or something like that. In the bed as well, you have 4 120 volt outlets and an additional one here, which is a 240 volt 30 amp outlet. Coming around to the front here, we have the frunk, and this has to be one of the most mic drop features for this vehicle, but not for the reason that you expect. One of the challenges with owning a truck is you don't have a great place to put things that are maybe more sensitive items that you don't want in the bed, other than the footwell in the back seat. And if you have people back there or kids or something else, you're kind of out of luck. You have nowhere to put this stuff. This is why a lot of people have
This shit has more outlets than my house.
They are more functional. That added room in the back, that covered area, is really useful because that's usually where we can put things. Now, this, because it has a frunk, offers that same capability. So if you have something...
I just remembered. Oops. Oh, God, I didn't even mean to do that. I just remembered. I got a letter the other day from let me go get it, from Hyundai. So this is the letter I got from Hyundai. This is a note. This notice is sent to you in accordance with the National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act. Hyundai has decided that a defect which relates to the motor vehicle safety exists in your vehicle with the VIN shown above. Hyundai is initiating recall campaign 208, a non-compliance recall to repair a trunk latch assembly in certain model year, blah, 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 blah. The purpose of this letter is to explain what the recall is about, to keep you informed of Hyundai's recall implementation plan. We are currently making preparations to blah, blah, whatever. What is the problem? The trunk latch pawl in the subject vehicles can thermally contract when exposed to high ambient temperature. While engaged under this condition, an attempt to release the pawl and open the trunk lid could result in damage to the pawl. A damaged pawl could prevent opening the trunk lid with the emergency trunk release inside the trunk, presenting risk of injury to an occupant locked in the trunk. To an occupant locked in the trunk. So, like, I know that it's a safety regulation to have that that trunk release latch on the inside of the trunk. But it's just kind of funny to see it put into writing, and they describe it as an occupant locked in the trunk. As such, the involved vehicles might not comply with the Federal Motor Safety blah, 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 interior trunk release. So it's just like, it's almost like we know you're locking people in your trunk, but you need to comply with the ability of having them be able to remove themselves from your trunk. This has to be a safety regulation that was put into place during the mob era, during the big mob era.
Clubs or camera gear or just other kinds of bags, groceries, whatever, and you don't have room because that footwell is taken up with people's legs, well, you now have an option here, and it is an incredible one. The frunk is automatic, just like the tailgate here. So click a button, it goes up, click a button, it goes down. You can also do it from inside the vehicle or on the frunk itself. And of course, there is the false bottom here. So it sits level and you can hop in here, just as I did, hang out, have a burger, eat, drink, do whatever you want. And then when you want to store something, you can lift up a compartment, and down beneath it, you have even more room. And the lid itself can be flipped around and used as sort of a drink station or whatever to kind of set things on, and even divide this space into different...
Is that a drain? Can you put ice in there and use it as a cooler?
Giant, copious amount of storage that is the frunk. You can use this, and it can close with...
Now, I will say this. If this thing right here is a drain, and you could put a bunch of ice in here and turn this into like a makeshift cooler... That is the win of the century. That's that would be awesome, and that would be a big sell for people that like to take their trucks out to like the river or out camping or whatever, and then like them and their friends gather around. They just have a bunch of beer and shit in their little makeshift cooler that automatically drains. They don't really have to worry about anything but dumping ice into here. That's pretty cool. That would be cool if that is a drain.
So really, really versatile in terms of what you can do with it. Oh, and also it has a drain. So if you want to throw some ice in there, a beverage of your choice, hang out, frunk gate, I guess it would be called.
That's awesome, Mike. See, I called it.
Just pull the drain and all the water goes at the bottom. You don't have to deal with it. Another case, maybe if you live somewhere like I do, you go to the beach, you take your kids, you're all wet and everything. You got all your wet clothes and your wet towels and everything. Throw it in there. The water will just drain right out. You don't have to worry about it getting anywhere else in the vehicle. So the frunk here is second to none. It really is great. I love how it opens to where the grill comes with it and you can easily access it, as well as all the other bells and whistles they thought of when designing this part of the truck. Now, before we get into the interior, there's one more thing to talk about here, and it's probably the other mic drop aspect of this vehicle, and that is the charging. Ford says that the F-150 Lightning can go from 15 to 80% in about 41 minutes, which gets you about 54 miles of range in just 10 minutes. So if you're taking this on a road trip, you stop at one of the DC fast chargers, which albeit are maybe harder to find than some of the other networks out there. When you do, it will charge up to 150 kilowatts, giving you plenty of range, meaning your stops won't be prolonged. And ideally, this will be something that you would maybe stop somewhere overnight, and then it kind of doesn't matter how slow or fast it is. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that this has bi-directional charging. Let me explain that for a second. So here at my house, I have two Tesla Powerwalls, and I have my main panel where the utility line comes in for the power, and that's where all the circuits go to all the things in my house. Well, I've installed a second panel, what's called a sub panel or an essential loads panel. Mine happens to be beautiful and made from this company called Span, which if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. And that actually is my entire house. So my house can be powered directly from my Tesla Powerwalls, and I'm sort of off grid. In fact, I go off grid every night to save money. More on that in an upcoming video. With the bidirectional charging of the F-150 Lightning, it can send out up to 80 amps. And with their partner Sunrun and the couple pieces of equipment you have to install, you'll be able to charge your house with your vehicle for up to 3 days, is what they're claiming. And inside of the vehicle, you can even set a sort of reserve range. That way you don't drain it all the way down to zero. Let's say every day you get up and you want to take it to work and back, that takes you 50 miles or whatever. You can set that up so that way you never go below that. Now, of course, in this scenario, that would mean that your house would be out of power. So, your mileage may vary there. Use that setting wisely. The other side of that is that, also while you're using the outlets and all the power that it can give you just from the built-in connections, you can do the same things.
The cynical part of my brain wants to believe that the reason why Republicans in Texas refuse to fix our power grid is because they all own stock in Ford, and they all want everyone to buy these trucks so that when the grid inevitably goes down again, everyone just powers their homes from their Ford trucks. That's the cynical part of me that speaking. I know that's not terribly rational, but I'm willing to bet it's not too far from the truth.
You can set sort of a reserve limit to say, oh, I'm camping or whatever. I know it's going to take me X amount of miles to get home. I can set that up so I don't miss any of these things and I'm not stranded here, right? So this bi-directional charging, you may have heard it called vehicle to grid or vehicle to X, like Lucid calls it, or I think more appropriately named here, vehicle to home, means that you don't have to spend the $10, $12, $15,000 on a home battery. You'll have a couple $1,000s. We don't know how much it's going to cost for the added components here, but then you have well over 100 kilowatt hours of energy, which again, just imagine 3 days going off grid. That's pretty incredible. And given how climate change is kind of mixing it up in terms of whether or not you're going to live somewhere with a blackout, I think that's going to be a selling feature.
That's putting it very lightly, mixing it up.
Hopefully you don't. The fact that it's there will give you a lot of comfort. So bi-directional charging, Ford is really throwing down the gauntlet here, and I wouldn't be surprised if every other automaker is going to have some answer to this. Maybe not in their low-end models, but the higher-end models, the ones with massive batteries, Absolutely. Why would it not be standard? So more to come on that for sure. Then when we get to the interior, we see tons of buttons and knobs and things, the kind of exact opposite of the Tesla Cybertruck or any of the other Teslas out there that are going for this minimalist kind of Spartan view. The F-150 is loaded. And the thing is, there's a reason for all that. I'm not going to sit here and try to explain it to you. I'm not an F-150 owner. I do like trucks and have owned them in the past, but a lot of this stuff is very specific to F-150 and F-150 owners. And the thing that Ford tried to explain to me that I thought was interesting on this was the reasons why certain things are laid out a certain way in the vehicle is because they've been doing this for so long that this is what their customers tell them they want, and they've kind of evolved it over time to really match with how people are used to using this vehicle.
AKA, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
If this was your first F-150, you might think, oh, this is weird, and then after you get used to it, it'll become standard. And then the next one comes out, and the next one comes out, and the next one comes out, and they would stick to that so it would feel familiar. I like this idea, but they have updated it to be a bit more modern and tech. They took the screen from the Ford Mach-E, the Mustang Mach-E, which I believe is also the same screen that's in the new Explorer, which is also going to be an electric option. And this screen is powering almost everything. Similar to the Mach-E, you can change your driving modes in here. You have built-in navigation and audio, and you can pair with your phone with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and it just works actually really well. I'm impressed with it. I mean, a lot of the other automakers trying to do electric cars and make them tech and flashy, I feel like are taking their 1980s software and just trying to make it, look a little bit different. This was written from the ground up, and it speaks to the efforts that they've done with Team Edison. So kudos to Ford again, actually giving it their all and putting their best foot forward here. And one neat thing about this screen is that it's not just, the controls of the car being made digital. It's actually a whole new platform that Ford has developed. It started with the Mach-E, and now it's here, and I imagine it'll be in all the future models eventually. But they are opening it up, or planning to open it up, as sort of an app store. What that means is that they're going to have dozens and hundreds of apps within the first couple months of it going live, because everyone out there is going to want to have their customers accessing their stuff. Imagine a Starbucks
That's kind of neat,
where it knows exactly your commute and where you go, and you get in the car, you hit one button, and bam, it orders it. You go through the drive-thru, there it is. Whatever the case may be, there's going to be a huge amount of potential here by allowing third-party companies to develop apps on this new platform. And this, I think, is a smart move. Imagine the iPhone pre-App Store. Now, Apple, as far as I know, didn't actually intend to have an app store, but it just became so obvious that they couldn't make every app that people wanted or even conceive of them. So let's open it up. Let's do the support verification. Like, they will still own the kind of ecosystem, but let's let all the other developers out there get on board here, make this thing, and then that is the real draw to the platform. So I think this is incredibly smart by Ford, and I hope it goes well. I hope every other automaker with capabilities like this built into their vehicles will do the same. So we'll have a sort of Android and iOS world in the future, where maybe you have a few different operating systems, but all the apps exist on all of them, and your experience from owning one car to the other is just so much more enhanced by the software rather than the typical car things that may really improve the driving experience overall. Now, of course, one of the key aspects of any electric vehicle is its range and its price, and kind of the ratio of those two things. And this one does not disappoint. The lower end of the F-150 Lightning comes in just shy of $40,000 and should get you around 230 miles.
That's not bad. For a truck, a little under 40,000.
Higher end, we're looking around $53,000, which should get you up.
At $53K for the higher end model, that's still cheaper than the Rivian.
Option this out, just like you can do every other F-150 on the planet, up to $90,000. Now, Ford still has the ability to take advantage of that $7,500 federal tax credit here in the U.S., as well as lots of
that must be the King Ranch
local incentives. So in the end, this is actually a really compelling vehicle. Not to mention, the savings on fuel alone are estimated to be around 70%. So imagine that you own a construction company or a small, concrete inspection business. You have clients, you're sending people out there every day. Here's one that is going to get you there and back.
I love these stock videos.
Around $40K, which is maybe higher than what you're used to paying. You get some tax credits, you get some local incentives. you're saving 70% on fuel, and you are having your guys drive a lot every day, as well as you're saving a ton on maintenance. Plus, you're giving them a more productive vehicle, which means they can get more done, which in turn means that you make more money. This is a no-brainer. This is a pure economics play at this point. The range and price of this vehicle are incredible. It is a great value, especially considering what you're getting, a full-size truck with a frunk. So even if you're an average truck owner, truck buyer, I mean, I was at a kid's birthday party this past weekend. I talked to 3 different folks that were all F-150 owners. They loved F-150. They were dying to know about it. Within 5 minutes, I had them on their phones placing orders. And the deal was that I told them it is the best F-150 ever made. We didn't talk about performance yet, but this thing performs better than a Ford Raptor does. Now, I don't know about the track and all that, but your straight line performance, that 0 to 60, that I'm at the stoplight and I need to get in front of this guy, or I need to get on to the freeway here and catch up, this performs better than any Ford truck ever. So you have this great utility vehicle. It's at a great price. It's super capable with the range, has bidirectional charging, a frunk that won't stop, and everything else
A
about
frunk
it
that
is just
won't
a winner,
stop.
as far as I'm concerned. I don't see anything negative about this at all that I can say. The only maybe thing that wouldn't work for me in my situation, and if you live in a place like Southern California or maybe say New York City or something where owning a truck is challenging, yeah, it's a full-size F-150. This is not the California it's not the Maverick, for example, or a Ford Ranger of the old days or whatever. This is a full-size truck. But for most people that are buying F-150s now, you're okay with that. You're totally fine. And remember, they sell close to 1 million of these every single year. And reportedly, they just doubled capacity and they're going into volume production, actually meaning volume, like making as many as they can, full-scale production, spring of 2022. They have over 150,000 pre-orders already. And my guess is that as soon as these start hitting the road, that is just going to keep going up, and hopefully they're going to ramp up production even more. That's kind of one of the benefits of a company like Ford doing this. First off, they're really giving it their all, making a compelling product, which I think is step one. And then step two is they have the ability to scale it. Maybe they might be battery constrained or semiconductor constrained like everyone in the world that's making anything. But other than that, once those things are taken care of, in terms of actually making the vehicles, they have tons of room at factories that they can switch over to this. And so that is why I'm so excited about what they're doing, especially with this vehicle. So this is a big deal. Not just is the F-150 the best-selling vehicle in the US for the past 40 years, it's a symbol. And it's one that is synonymous with trucks in America, which is a big deal. It's as big as it gets, honestly. And so with companies like Ford really committing to this, and already we've seen success, they've seen success with the Mach-E, and now I'm sure that they will sell every single one that they make of these electric F-150s. They're going to continue down the line. They'll probably have an electric Explorer. I think we know about that one. Probably a Bronco, et cetera, et cetera. So when they get on board...
All right. We get it. We get it. Yeah, that looks really cool. Like, I'm super into that. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you liked what I said, what Justin said, if you like the content we're providing, if you had any kind of laughs at all, even if you hate us, if you hate my guts, if you want to stab me, if you want to say all sorts of horrible things to me, cool. Like the video, subscribe, you'll get fed all sorts of shit you'll probably hate, and if you like us, you'll get fed all sorts of shit you probably like. So, please, and thank you.